The movie opens with our protagonist, Matthew, who is on a plane that lands in France. On his way out of the airport, he calls his daughter Sarah and tells her that he'll be arriving home soon. After a short drive, he reaches his apartment where he receives a call from Sarah via the walkie-talkie. She asks him to come to her mom's place, an apartment located in a different building across the street. Matthew grabs a box and quickly heads to meet his daughter. He knocks on the door and his wife Anna opens it. However, she doesn't have much time to welcome him because she is currently in the middle of teaching an online class. Matthew then goes to his daughter's room where she is living inside a hermetically sealed capsule. Turns out the little girl has a mysterious allergy called autoimmune syndrome. Upon greeting her, Matthew gives her the box that contains some natural scents from Canada. She also finds a memory chip, which she quickly inserts in her virtual reality set. Sarah is awestruck to see a breathtaking view of beautiful Rocky Mountains and a lake as she has never stepped outside her capsule. I live in Canada and I've never seen that shit either. After Anna finishes her class, Matthew comes to talk to her. He excitedly tells her that he has discovered a new treatment for their daughter, so they must move to Canada. Anna is clearly skeptical because she hasn't heard anything of it from doctors, but Matthew asserts that it is just launched. However, she still refuses, saying they must gather more information about it before making their decision. This upsets Matthew, so he walks out and returns back to his apartment. Meanwhile, Sarah video calls her two best friends, Charlotte and Noe, who also have the same condition as she does. Get in, bitches! We're going to VR Canada! Later, Matthew is in the middle of a shower when an earthquake hits Paris. The power suddenly goes off and Sarah's capsule changes to battery mode. Scared, she calls her father, who hurriedly dresses up to get to her. As he makes his way out, he hears loud sirens and screaming voices of people. His confusion rises further when he discovers a flock of birds flying in the sky. Matthew then walks towards a junction where he discovers a shocking sight. Thick, deadly fumes are emerging from the ground, and everyone who inhales it dies instantly. He soon sees the gas spreading through the streets, taking over the entire city. Sensing the imminent danger, Matthew dashes towards his family. He immediately asks Anna to accompany him, warning her not to breathe the toxic gas outside. Anna is worried about Sarah, but Matthew tells her that she's safe inside her capsule. Following this, the couple rushes upstairs, while the deadly gas also makes its way up inside the building. They make it to the top floor and enter an apartment where an elderly couple, Lucien and Colette, live. Once inside, they quickly shut all the doors and windows and watch the fumes eventually settle at the roof level. Sometime later, they step onto the balcony, only to discover that the entire city is covered by the mist, leaving only the rooftops visible. Colette is worried for her son, but Lucien somehow manages to console her. Meanwhile, Matthew starts thinking about their next move, while Anna talks to Sarah via walkie-talkie. The little girl seems scared as the gas in her room has become thicker. Anna then checks the capsule's battery on her phone and estimates that it'll last approximately for 10 hours. While at the balcony, Matthew is approached by Lucien, who tries to call his son but fails. The elderly man then tells him about his son, who lives on the ground floor of another building. He's optimistic that his son is okay as he's smart and clever. Back inside, Anna asks Matthew about what they should do next, but the latter is also clueless. Just then, Lucien retrieves an old radio from his closet, but it doesn't seem to be working. While they try to repair it, Matthew walks out to the stairs, intending to check the mist. He puts his hand in it, but nothing happens. This makes him realize that the gas inflicts harm only if one inhales it. That was risky and stupid. Following this, Matthew returns back to the apartment and decides to go check on Sarah. However, Anna forbids him, saying he won't be able to hold his breath for that long. Moments later, he suddenly remembers another elderly neighbor, Belkacem, who lives just a floor below and uses an oxygen tank. Matthew then makes a risky decision to hold his breath, head to the floor below, and find the tank. After Anna reluctantly agrees, he grabs a hammer and a flashlight from Lucien and climbs down through the window. He takes a deep breath before entering the mist. Upon reaching Belkacem's window, Matthew smashes it with a hammer and makes his way inside. As he starts searching for the oxygen tank, he comes across the dead body of Belkacem. However, he doesn't have time to react, and he was gonna kill him with the hammer even if he was alive. He needs that oxygen tank. So, he continues with the search. He eventually manages to locate the tank and puts on the mask to breathe. After this, he peeks out of the window to tell Anna that he has found the oxygen. He also informs her that he's going to check on Sarah now. Matthew puts the oxygen tank in a bag and slowly heads downstairs. He approaches his daughter and leaves her some food as well as a flashlight, asking her to use it optimally. He also changes her capsule's battery and leaves her after promising to return soon. Following this, Matthew heads outside to check the situation. Upon stepping outside, he is greeted by a grim sight. A number of dead bodies lying in the streets. Acting rationally, he hurriedly proceeds to gather some batteries from the vehicles. During this, he hears whistling sounds. Careful, Matthew, that's Proto-Man, prompting him to head towards the same. He encounters some soldiers leading a group of survivors, all wearing gas masks. Turns out they're headed to Montmartre, a hill that sits above the level of the fog. Matthew asks one of the soldiers about what's going on, but they also don't know anything yet. The soldiers then give him a face mask, asking him to accompany them. However, Matthew refuses, asserting that his family is waiting for him. He then requests for one extra mask before parting ways. Upon returning to the apartment, Matthew tells everyone about what he saw and how the soldiers are leading the people to a hilltop. That night, Anna continues her attempt to fix the radio, while also conversing with the elderly people. In the interim, Matthew goes to the staircase to check on the fog and realizes that it's rising a few centimeters every hour. The following morning, Anna successfully repairs the radio, but all the channels relay the same emergency message to stay safe. Just then, they hear an explosion, so Matthew and Anna hurriedly climb to the building's roof to check the matter. Through binoculars, they see riots breaking out among the survivors at Montmartre, probably due to the lack of place to stay. After this, Anna suggests that they go to stay at Charlotte's place in the hills, so that Sarah can share her friend's capsule. But in order to move her, they need a sealed suit which is stored at a nearby laboratory building. Thus, Matthew and Anna decide to head towards the lab. Before leaving, they visit Sarah and inform her about the plan. She likes the idea, but requests them to visit Noe, who stays alone at his apartment. Venturing outside, Matthew and Anna head straight to Noe's building, but before they can enter, a violent dog shows up and starts chasing them through the ruined streets. In this intense moment, they accidentally get separated, with Matthew tumbling into a river. The dog chases Anna into a bus, but its leash gets stuck on a suitcase, stopping it from moving further. Anna then uses this opportunity to escape through the window and heads on in search of her husband. Upon reaching the bridge, she calls his name, but receives no response. Meanwhile, Matthew manages to swim out from the other side of the river and starts looking for his wife. Left with no other option, Anna proceeds to the lab alone, but just before entering the building, Matthew comes running towards her. The two then enter the building and start searching for the suit they need. After inspecting several lab rooms, they ultimately find a suitcase with a sealed suit. On their way out, they pass by a room that suddenly explodes, throwing the couple against the wall. They somehow survive the incident, but Matthew's coat catches fire.
No, not my good buffalo hide!
That was French. Reacting swiftly, Anna grabs a fire extinguisher and puts out the fire, but this incident has damaged Matthew's oxygen pipe, rendering him unable to breathe. Seeing him struggle, Anna hurriedly shares her mask while holding her breath. The two take turns to breathe and eventually manage to reach the top floor, where the environment is safe. Anna then checks on her husband and finds that he has a severe burn on his stomach. She hastily retrieves a first aid kit from a closet and applies it to his wound. As they prepare to leave, they realize that their oxygen tank doesn't have enough air for both of them to head back home. As a result, Matthew tells Anna to get going, assuring her that he'll find another way home. At first, she refuses to leave him behind, but he reminds her that their daughter needs the suit, eventually convincing her. The couple then share a passionate kiss before parting ways. While Anna heads back through the streets, Matthew makes his way via building roofs. Just as Anna reaches her building, her oxygen runs out. As a result, she must make it to the top floor without breathing. Despite this setback, she somehow manages to hold her breath long enough to make it above the fog. Once she enters Lucien's apartment, she opens the briefcase, and much to her dismay, the suit has been damaged due to the earlier explosion. On the other hand, Matthew comes across the roof of a parking lot with several bags of supplies. He also discovers the dead body of a police officer who appears to have been murdered. Upon entering the building, he discovers more supplies, including an oxygen tank. He takes the tank and prepares to leave, but just then, he's intercepted by another police officer. This cop asks Matthew to put down the mask, but the latter stands still. The officer then brings out his gun, but before he can aim, Matthew puts on the mask and pushes him off the edge. They land on a car, resulting in the officer dropping his gun. He tries to get it back, but Matthew holds him back until the cop inhales the deadly gas. falls and dies. At the apartment, Anna is talking to her daughter when her phone beeps, alerting that Sarah's capsule is running out of battery. This freaks her out, so she decides to change the battery even if it doesn't have an oxygen tank. Anna takes a deep breath and rushes down to Sarah's capsule. She hurriedly changes the battery and heads back upwards. Shortly after, Matthew arrives at the building and hears Sarah trying to contact her mother via walkie-talkie. He then enters her room and the little girl confides how her mother came to change the battery without wearing a mask. Concerned, Matthew rushes to check on his wife, but he finds her lying lifeless on the stairs. Turns out she was only a few seconds away from reaching the apartment. Matthew is devastated by the sight and he starts crying uncontrollably. After a while, he grabs the walkie-talkie to tell his daughter regarding the bad news. The following day, another earthquake shakes Paris, which causes the mist to rise even more. Realizing that they can't stay here for much longer, Matthew decides to go out in search of a bodysuit for his daughter. He also assures Lucien that he'll find 2 oxygen tanks for them, but the elderly man refuses to leave. He expresses that he and his wife have lived a good life, and they're happy to accept this as their end. Helpless, Matthew apologizes for their predicament and walks out. He then goes to Sarah to tell her that he's venturing out. The little girl forbids him from going, fearing that he'll end up like her mother, but Matthew promises to return. "I'm going to get oxygen tanks, honey, not milk." Following this, Matthew wanders around the streets and eventually notices the dead body of a bus driver wearing a hazmat suit. He quickly retrieves it and grabs a nearby scooter, making his way back to the apartment in freaking style. But while riding amidst the low visibility, a boy suddenly comes in his way. In an attempt to evade collision, Matthew swerves the scooter handle, causing him to crash and hit his head. People crash everything in movies, even scooters. On the other hand, Sarah tries to contact her father, but receives no response. A short while later, she hears someone entering her room, which freaks her out. Back on the street, Matthew regains consciousness and realizes that his head is bleeding. Despite this, he keeps running towards the building with the suit in hand, but now he has become very fragile due to the pain, so he has to stop and rest. While he tries to get up again, he sees 2 shadows approaching from a distance. Much to his surprise, it's Sarah and Noe. Sarah then runs towards her father and embraces him for the first time in her life. She reveals that Noe came for her and that the deadly fumes don't harm them. Matthew doesn't understand how this is possible, but he is overjoyed to see his daughter, who is finally free from her capsule. In the final scene, we see Matthew, who wakes up inside Sarah's capsule. Turns out that their roles have reversed, and it's Sarah who now looks after her father.
I can't believe I remembered that.